Happy New Year. It's January and I haven't done a coffee talk in a while, so I thought I should share, I should at least share what my plans are for the coming year. So I'm calling this talk Starting Points. I started this coffee talk back in late 2019. I did my very first one in December of 2019. And through the years now, uh, for 5 years, my math is always a little fuzzy. So I did it all the year of 2020, all of 2021, all of 2022, all of 23, and all of 24. So 5 years I've been doing this. And so the the purpose hasn't really changed a lot of why I'm doing coffee talks. I primarily wanted a way to share thoughts and ideas with my friends and family, and also knowing that not everyone is my target audience. I didn't bother too hard to try to find out who is my target audience in this case. Um, when I'm creating a project that I need it to be financially viable, I work harder to figure out who the target audience is and make sure I'm reaching them. But in a case like this, where I'm just trying to share my life journey, assuming that it will encourage someone else on, you guys on your life journey, I I I wasn't trying to make a financially viable thing. I wasn't trying to make it something, and so I didn't worry. I said, it'll sort itself out. The people that this is not useful for, they will filter themselves out. You don't have to watch it. And so for those that are encouraged and strengthened and interested, then they'll stick around. They'll like this. So that's been my sort of my functioning over the last 5 years as I've been doing this. The audience has shifted and changed at different times. I've had various people. There's been mornings. There's been times when I did the coffee talks. Hey, Daniel. There've been lots of times when I did the coffee talks where there were a lot of things happening in the comments. Other times the comments are just quiet. Um, I've on occasion had some guests that would join me for a coffee talk. Sometimes that created more of a stir. Sometimes it was just like everyone else. And so, from that perspective, there's still for me a desire to continue this format in some ways. The problem I run into is there's certain times in my actual film work projects where the amount of work I'm doing on the computer, the amount of work I'm doing with media, can sometimes make it hard to break away and do this and then go back and focus on that. And so there's certain times in projects where there's gaps. If you go back and look at the playlist, you'll see like there's sometimes 4 weeks or more where there's a gap, often 1 week gap, sometimes 2 week gap, but several times like a month or more gap. And usually it's because of the intensity of the work I'm involved in or whatever. It makes it hard to do that. So I I had started with high aspirations that I would do this, every Tuesday at 10. Well, today's a Friday. It's almost noon here um, in Denver area, and so I'm like, I can't be too specific on when I do this, but I wanted to share some things with my Stacy and I spent some time up in New England um, in that first week of January. And so we flew up on a Monday morning. We spent some time. It was very cold. It was awesome. New England cold. We got to experience it and see it. And so as a result, though, I I wanted to share. Actually, I think I have one photo. Let me see if I can actually find the picture that I took of Stacy and I up in the cold, because we did manage to take a few pictures. We were talking through what we're doing for the new year, and all of that. And so here we go. I think I can do this picture. Let's try it. So here is Now I got to find out a way to bring it over here. Uh, there we go. There you can see us. We are up there in New England. It was very cold, but we had a really good time. And so the whole purpose of our trip was we were needing to talk through our life goals and direction, and basically come up with some better filters for the activities we do. Because a year ago, right about now, I had overcommitted, got really slammed, and things were difficult. And so I don't want to just always do all the good things that show up. I want to be thoughtful and choose the right things. And so even with coffee talks, it's pretty streamlined right now. I can, takes me 5 minutes to go make a cup of coffee. It takes me about 5 minutes to set up the opening bit with the music and the title, and then make sure that the cameras are set up and have batteries, and then about 30 minutes of talking. So overall, and then usually right after I'm done, I have to go on YouTube and make sure it hit all the right playlists and all that kind of stuff, right? But overall, it takes me less than an hour to do this 30-minute coffee talk, which is really good for anything for me that involves video, audio, visual stuff. I mean, if I can do something in less than an hour, that's a good return on my time. And the other part of it that makes me want to keep doing it, not just because it's easy and I can squeeze it into the clock there, but simply because when I share my journey, I get to hear back from you all bits and pieces of your journey and how that encourages you. And hearing back from you then encourages me. And so then it becomes a very good a good feedback loop, something positive in my life. And so I enjoy that part of it, that when I share some of my thoughts and faith and it impacts you and you share back with me, that's great. And that's part of why I keep doing it. But I did think of the starting point, because this has been something that has been on my heart most of my adult life. I've been like, I want to share some things. Even when I got married, Stacey was like, why? And I've shared this before. Stacey's like, what do you want to be? Some influencer dude? I'm like, well, I don't know. I hadn't thought of it in that way, that I'm trying to be an influencer. What I really cared about and what I've been learning, and this is what I've continued to learn, is that God makes each of us very specifically and for a purpose. And so one of the purposes that God made me for was to share truth. And as I'm sharing truth, there's discipleship where you interact and work together with people and your lives are more intertwined. And then there's this other thing where we proclaim truth, where we share truth. And that sharing of truth is one of the strands that is in my spiritual DNA that God wants me to do. And so sometimes I do it better than others. And hey, Ron, did you get snow down in Mobile, Alabama? Because I saw pictures of snow all across the South. But greetings. I'm glad it's sunny there today. It's sunny here too. It's just sunny 45 and still have snow on the ground. So talking about that, I one of the things I want to do this year is I've been working on a book project for a while, and in the book project, I'm trying to explain where I came from, and in the Amish world, how did the mindset settle on a young man? Because I never was a baptized member of the Amish church, and as a result, I was never excommunicated or shunned because I'd never been officially a member of the church. But what I discovered in those years of coming out of the Amish is that even though I never was a member of the church per se, I still had so much of an Amish worldview inside of me, the way I thought, the way I looked at people, the way I approached life. And some of those were really good, and some of those were real struggles for me because they hindered me from being able to receive what God had intended for me to walk in. And so when I was about 5 years ago, I had started writing a book. Wow, 7.5 inches of snow in Mobile, Alabama on Tuesday. It's gone by today, of course, but 7.5 inches. That's pretty impressive. So thanks for the interruption, by the way. I love the interruptions. So the the point as I started writing the book 5 years ago is I was like, well, where do I start? And then I thought, well, where am I trying to go? And the thing, in life and I love a good map. I enjoy having a good like treasure map type thing where I'm saying, well, here's all this. I love that. And so maps are just, they're fun. And so I have friends and family who will draw and sketch maps, and I just think it's the coolest thing ever. I love maps. Even when I travel, even to this day, I will have a route on my phone, but I will also have my paper atlas that I will still study and look at stops and places, and I will be aware of where I'm headed and what I'm doing. So the thing about a map, like if I look at this map right here, the when you look at a map like this, it's you're expecting it to be a treasure map, and somewhere on this map you're looking for an X or some thing that marks the spot where the treasure is. And that's important. You want to know where you're headed. But the second part is you want to know, where am I right now? And so if you look at this, I have this is, I take pictures of these when I travel, these maps. So like this is here locally, the Peaks to Plains Trail. And actually you can start down in Golden, you can go to Idaho Springs, and they're working on a biking trail that will go the whole distance. But the thing that I always love about these maps, if you look right here, there's a little sign that tells me you are here. And in this case, you're right by Tunnel 1 at the trailhead at Windy Saddle Park, and this is where you are. And I have always been, well, I pushed the wrong button there. There we go. I've always been so intrigued by those maps that say you are here, because in most of our life, we don't ever have that indicator saying, here's where you are. But in most of our life, we have people saying, hey, don't you want to go there? Don't you want to get there? Don't you want to? And so, financially, people are like, you should do this, you should do that. And it's a rare person that will take the time to sit with us and find out where we are before telling us where we ought to go. And most people are just like, you should do this, you should do that. And they just like throw stuff at you. Well, if you've ever been on a hiking trail in the wilderness, you know that if I'm down, let's say I'm down in the along the Rio Grande St. Helena Canyon in Big Bend National Park, and I tell people I'm going to hike Pikes Peak today. Somebody has to come along and say, Joseph, you are here in St. Helena Canyon, and Pikes Peak is in Colorado. You're in Texas, and you can't hike there today. Like, you'll have to drive a very long way, and you won't make it. Like, that's impossible. And basically, it's the old story that we picked up in the hills of Tennessee, where they used to tell the story where that the guy pulls up, and here's the old man is sitting on his front porch, and he yells out, hey, can you give me directions? I'm trying to get over to such and such a holler. And the guy thinks for a while, and he finally looks up and says, you can't get there from here. You got to go someplace else to start. And sometimes in life, that is actually sort of true. Like, where you are right now is a bad starting point for the goal that you say you want to do. And so when I started saying this year, I would really like to finish that book, I started asking, well, where am I? Am I in a place where I can finish this book? What was holding me back? Because I wrote a whole bunch of chapters a couple years ago. Wrote them all out, read through them. So when I went back and looked at it, I said, where am I today? Am I in a better place? And then I realized, well, the problem back then, and this is what I had figured out then, was I'm not sure where I'm going with the book. What's the purpose and the message? I had a concept and a hook, but what is the message where I'm going with? And this whole thing tickles me a bit, because when I was younger, in my early 20s, I was like, hey, I want to write books. And my brother, who's even younger than me, was like, you shouldn't write a book until you're at least 40 years old. Now, it's true, we'd heard someone say this, but he held my feet to the fire, was like, you shouldn't write a book. And I was like, if I want to write a book, I'll write a book. And I am now safely past the year 40, and so I'm allowed to write a book now if I want to. But when I started to write a book after I made it to the ripe old age of 40, I discovered that I'm not quite sure where I'm ending this story. So I want to tell a bit about my life, about growing up Amish and the journey that I've been on. That's what I want to share in the book. If I would have tried to write this book 20 years ago, I realize the place I would have ended it, the lessons I would have drawn out of it, maybe even the morals and the preachiness that I would have tried to apply to you, the tone would have been quite a bit different. I 20 years ago would have seen myself as an expert in a whole bunch of things that now I look at, I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not so sure that I actually know what I'm talking about in this particular area, which goes to the point of, if you wait till after 40, you're more likely to understand what you don't know and be a little bit more cautious in asserting yourself in areas that you think you know. So in looking at how I want to approach this year and where I am, I'm in the middle of editing a whole bunch of films, and so I have a bunch of projects right here, right now. I have to stay on them. And so what I'm thinking of doing is, rather than doing the full long form, I'm looking at, back 6 years ago, I was doing some mug stories where I just tell a 1-minute video, 1-minute story about a mug that I owned. And I still have mugs that I can tell stories about. I got more mugs for Christmas. I have so many mugs now, way too many mugs. We're having trouble knowing where to put them. I put some of them in the RV and some of them are here, and I'm like, I need a cabin that needs mugs so I can take a bunch of mugs over there and use them when I'm there. That's what I need. So I'm thinking about going back to that format where I do some just a 1-minute, like a devotional, Bible verse, mug story, just a 1-minute thing, and that I do those on a weekly basis, but that I do this coffee talk more on a maybe a monthly basis, like this, in this format. Hi, Joe. Thanks for joining me. Hey, Sam. Can I bring a bunch of mugs and hang them in one of your portable cabins? Because that would be awesome. Well, actually, I love my mugs, so I don't want them to go far, far away. I need them to be close enough that at least every so often I can go make coffee in them and use them. I know, I'm a sentimental dude. Hey, Nuri, thank you for joining from Katy, Texas. So this is where I'm saying what I want to do with the coffee talks for this year is I have 2 things. One is I want to do basically a monthly coffee talk where I share what's going on a little bit and what I'm thinking about, for sure. So I'm committing myself to like once a month, and then weekly I want to do these shorter, just coffee moments, like what I used to do with the mug stories. However, what I want to do is occasionally, if I have a friend who's with me, I want to take a slightly longer form, and occasionally have a guest where we can talk about something, whether it's film related or ministry related or family related or Amish Anabaptist history related, all the different things that I care about, or just plain old coffee mug related. I want to take a little bit more time with somebody and spend more like an hour talking with them and putting that out here. So I have my longer form, my regular one that I've been doing where it's just me talking somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. And then my 1-minute ones. And then I have one other thing that I'm hoping to get to. And so this will, if it works, I will probably start this in February, but I'll post about it some more. So this idea is that the chapters that I've written in my book so far, I want to actually take the time to talk through each chapter, the history from my life. So basically telling you my story the way I'm trying to tell it in the book, and just talk through it, because one of the things I've discovered is that the more I talk through something, the more my brain will remember things. Sometimes other people will be like, hey, do you remember this? Oh yeah, I do remember that. So I want to, as part of my exercise and part of my goal of trying to finish writing this book, I want to talk through my life story, starting from my earliest memories in the hills of Tennessee all the way through to recent years. And so I'm still choosing a point at which I want to end it on, but it's sometime between 2018 and now is when I want to bring it up to here. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And I at first, and just to spare you, at first I was going to write this almost a how-to book on how to know what you should believe. And the more I thought about it, I was like, that my shelves back here are just, I have whole bookshelves full of how-to and self-help books. And honestly, the books I like to read the most are the books where people just tell the stories of someone's life. And as I read the stories of their life, I begin to learn something about myself, and where it's more of story and less about all the other. And so I changed it from wanting me to be self-helping you and I just want to tell a story. So I'm basically choosing now to put a bit of an autobiography together of my childhood up till now and what God has done in my life and how he's worked. And that gives me space so that later on in the next 20 years, if I end up saying, you know what, here's some more of what God did, that's great. However, if in the process of telling the story, I realize I'm just getting way too, that the story is going too in depth, and there's a good ending point earlier, I will end earlier. So that's part of what the process is going to be, is I think next month, I'm working on, I have a few deadlines I need to meet this month. And once I know that I'm in the clear on those, I will make a sort of a timeline of like, okay, this is when I'm going to start telling the stories, and here's how I'm going to do it. And so then I'm just going to start at the beginning and tell the stories of my life, the wedding process. So when I'm finished, and if I do this, I will let you know whether this was a dreadful idea or whether it was super helpful. If it turns out to be too dreadful and I'm halfway through it, I'm just going to scrap it and not go on with it. But this is my plan. I wanted you to know. So my starting point at the beginning of the year is I want to finish writing this book, but I have a few deadlines of other things I'm really trying to finish that I need to get back on track with. So I thought I would come today, share briefly what's been going on, and let you know. And I'm really looking forward to this year and taking away the need for a weekly, every week coffee talk is good for me. So I'm planning on 12 coffee talks like this, plus however many it takes in the middle to tell the book story. So those are my thoughts for today. Thanks for checking in, and I will update you in February on how all this is running down. And February is coming up pretty quick here. So blessings. Thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to getting to tell more of the stories that what God has done in my life.